Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lessons from MassVaxx. First off, who are we? We are quite a few people, actually. I'm Peter, and David, our project manager here, has slyly delegated this presentation to me. We'll both be running the Q&A section later. Unfortunately, you won't get to meet everyone here today. Next, what is MassVaxx?
MassVaxx, we're a group of volunteers that we wanted to do our part and help combating COVID.
MassVaxx is an application that provides a clean, concise workflow for registering for a vaccine and then administering a vaccine.
MassVaxx stands for Mass Vaccination System, and it was originally produced for the specifications for some of the public health systems for the state of Wisconsin. However, from the very beginning, it was meant to be much more broad than that. It helps to have one end user who can really specify what they need, and from there you can grow.
MassVaxx is a volunteer group that came together to create an open source vaccination software suite. There are two primary components with the vaccination software that we're creating. The first component is going to be patient registration and appointment scheduling. So with this, once a group has their software installed, anyone could go through and register to receive the vaccine and then create an appointment to get that vaccine on a specific day and time. So that's the first component. The second component of MassVaxx as a software is going to be vaccination administration. So we recognize that most groups that need open source vaccine software probably don't have the equipment and technology to actually easily handle all of the patient records, all of the appointments, and all of the other data that will be going back and forth with administering a vaccine. So the second component is creating a vaccination software suite so physicians and other clinicians can go through and record administering the vaccine.
But what was it like working on MassVaxx?
It was my first time working on an open source project. The flexibility of the schedules of everyone involved took a bit of getting used to. Thinking back, we tried to run the project as a work project would have been run, with Jira tickets and a Jira board and sprints and everything like that. Whereas an open source project with volunteers may have gone better more as a big backlog that everyone works through on their spare time. But we didn't do that, so I don't know if that would have gone better or worse. It was good to be working with a talented set of young minds and to be teaching and working together with them along the way.
It was definitely interesting for me, especially as a biomechanics student. It was a whole new experience for me, so I really wanted to dive into the software development and see how it goes. So especially with the management tools we've been using and all that, I feel like even working remotely, it was working really nicely for our group. We definitely did hit some rock bottom, I guess, with having keeping people more motivated to keep working on it, because it was, even though it was really tight, the timeline, but it was still a lot of work and a lot of months that we spent working on it. So it was a little hard to keep people engaged and encourage them to keep working on it. But I still feel like having that, I guess, open source environment did really help, because we were still able to also have more people join us throughout the journey of MassVaxx, and also have new perspectives to chime in, and also help us give new ideas to improve the software.
It's had its fair share of challenges, especially when running into third-party software and at some points communication, but all in all, I had a fantastic time. I really enjoyed working with all of the members I got to, and yeah, I would 100% do it again.
MassVaxx wasn't run like your typical open source projects. We had a little bit more structure and a little bit more administration and overhead, which I think is both good and bad. The main advantage of that was having a more cohesive plan and priority list than perhaps your typical open source project where, you know, Joe decides we should measure it in meters instead of feet now. So Joe goes in and makes a massive pull request to change everything from feet to meters or whatever. So that element of focus was nice. I think, you know, most large open source projects would probably have a little bit less testing overhead and would be a little bit less prone to unexpected bugs because they're using things like continuous integration to make sure that these random pull requests coming from random people don't break the entire code base. I don't think, you know, our project is not currently large enough to warrant those kinds of mechanics. It would probably be more overhead than it's worth. But it did mean that, you know, someone would break the main branch and another person would figure it out 2 hours later, and then I would be pausing my wine sipping at 9 p.m. to fix the development branch. So it was kind of back and forth. But I think for me personally, it was a lot of fun just to work with people.
What about FHIR and MassVaxx?
We found that using FHIR as the basis of our design was incredibly helpful and actually really shortened our time frame in terms of design. And the reason for that is because we were able to use FHIR as the basis of our data mapping. And from there, we were able to determine what we needed to put onto the user interface to be able to architect solid records within FHIR. It really opened our eyes as we began this process to be able to go through both the FHIR documentation as well as the IHE immunization record documentation to show what we needed to be able to acquire. And in turn, the data that you need to be acquire in turn drives either your user interface or your interoperability specification.
To handle the logic for our FHIR server, we use the open source Happy FHIR server, which saved us a lot of time, and it really helps to be able to work off of all of the work that team has put into that server.
You know, the greatest thing about FHIR in terms of this project is that we didn't really have to use it. And let me explain, because that sounds kind of misleading. For the majority of the developers on the project, FHIR was kind of this magic black box off to the side. You know, it stored our data. It provided a usable interface through which we communicated with our primary server. And it handled tons of stuff that we could just kind of forget about.
I will say that the solution that the devs who worked with FHIR had in place made everything very, very easy for testing and additional development.
What did we learn?
The first lesson learned is don't underestimate a group of determined people. Even if they are working on full-time on other projects, if there's something they feel passionate about, they will make the time to get things done. And that's part of the whole just being in awe of this group of individuals, of which there were quite a few, actually. Lessons learned. Using development tools such as Jira and having a very strong project manager was incredibly useful. Using GitHub and having, but it's more than just using Jira and using GitHub. It's having the processes around it to be more specific, to discuss like how testing is done and how branch management is done, and having that planning ahead, even on an open source project, was very valuable. Another lesson learned is that as soon as you say FHIR, people just go, oh, okay, good, check, and you don't have to explain it. There have been people who have approached me who have said, well, your project sounds really nice, but I wouldn't use it unless it was developed on FHIR, to which thankfully I was able to immediately turn on and say, well, it is. And they say, oh, well, in that case, I'd like to learn more.
Everyone comes into programming, I think, from a different perspective. Some people do code camps, some people do, traditional undergrad or master's degree route, and someone like me is self-taught. And I think each of those strategies really comes with different pros and cons. I'll do me. Being self-taught, I think I'm very good at approaching new technology and approaching new problems and getting there. I've never had some sort of external safety net, some sort of like resource to go ask questions to, at least within the context of web development specifically. And so, when someone else has a question, or when I can't figure something out, that's a very comfortable scenario for me. Whereas I think for people coming at it from a different background, they have a little bit more trouble with that.
I'd never really done, this sort of thing, jumping on an open source project. I learned that I absolutely enjoy this. I learned that, I guess from a technical standpoint, I learned about some different authentication and authorization softwares, options for a site, but from a more human stance, I guess I would say I learned that discipline and urgency on a team can 100% happen in open source projects. It definitely doesn't happen in a vacuum. Even for open source projects that, sound like a great idea, can get people excited, all team members really need to show up, which I felt like really happened on this project and helped get a lot of projects through. It sort of continued to amaze me. Seeing my perspective, which was I got to put in a couple hours a week, and then seeing, what people who ran with it in all of their time, seeing how much they got done, seeing how effectively they solved problems, it was really cool.
I have learned that being a full-stack web developer is more than the sum of the parts of a back-end and front-end developer. The integration between the front and back ends formed a large part of the troubleshooting and the unexpected work that we had to do. Having a plan for that integration and having a centralized set of assumptions, data formats, etc., is crucial to saving time in the long run, even or especially if adjustments need to be made on the fly.
Working with MassVaxx definitely helped me in a personal level, again, to develop skills that I was looking for. So to be more technical, I did want to learn more about software development and the steps that goes into producing a product within the software development realm. So that was really interesting and exciting for me to see how you can start from just like a simple idea and then have the actual software in front of you that you can like click through. So that was really exciting. But also it did help me a lot in understanding how working with groups from different backgrounds is definitely different than just like working with a group in a classroom where you literally know the people that you're working with and you're used to them. So it was really nice to just like meet all these different people and see how they work and also try and like fit in your perspective and your knowledge within what is like the discussions that are happening and all that. It was really interesting to see that. And I did definitely feel like I've grown as an individual working with a group, especially that it was all remotely. It was definitely like challenging because sometimes when you're working in person, group members can easily feel more vulnerable and like talking more about what they think is best or even like asking for help. So having that, like having people work remotely, that was definitely like a challenge to like reach that level. But I feel like MassVaxx did definitely try to get there And it really worked, and I really liked it. I feel like Slack definitely helped with the jokes that people just write every once in a while. And yeah, I also feel like that like the experience with MassVaxx definitely helped me getting ready for my internship that I have this summer, because I'm also working in a software development company. So I feel like a lot of the skills that I've gained working with MassVaxx, I'm also using them in this company. So it was really nice.
And now for our Q&A. Oh, hello, everyone. If you have any questions, please post them in the Hogya app. We have someone looking through that now, and they will get them to us. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Anne from HL7HQ. I don't see any questions that came in, so thank you for attending. And please don't forget to rate the session in Hogya.